Hi there. It's August the 29th, and today we are continuing our journey through the book of Job, and we're in Job chapters 31 to 33. In Job 31, Job brings his defense to a close, and the chapter actually ends saying, Tamudifrei of the words of Job close with this. And in this last chapter, Job is basically saying, I'm not afraid to be judged by God. I am standing in my integrity, but I need to know that God is doing this. I need to understand why God is doing this. If I've done anything wrong, I'm prepared to be reproved for it, but he can't see where he's done wrong. And he stands in his righteousness, he stands in his integrity, but he does somewhat defend himself on the basis of the good he's done. And this leads to chapter 32, to a young man called Elihu, who's been listening to these three older men correcting or railing against their friend Job. And he is becoming more and more incensed because he sees them taking positions. He sees the three friends taking the position of saying, you've done wrong, Job, you've sinned. And he sees Job taking the position of, no, I've done right, I'm in the right. And this toing and froing, this argy-bargy going on spiritually between them. But Elihu actually says to Job, Job, I have to speak up, because I'm listening to these older men and I'm not hearing wisdom, I'm not hearing this discernment. It says, and in fact, Job, I'm just hearing you justifying yourself, and what I want to see or what I want to hear is the justification of God in this. I want to hear about what God is doing. And so even though Elihu is young, he dares to speak up in the midst of these older, wiser men, and he begins to unpack who God is. And in chapter 33 there are some very key things that he says about God. First of all, he acknowledges that God has created everyone. God is the source of everything. He says the Spirit of God made me, the Word of God gave me breath. And so there's something about establishing God's overall power over the lives of men. And then he says God speaks. God is not a God who is distant. He's not a God who's far away. He's not just walking about above the clouds. He actually speaks. He speaks in visions of the night. He wants to communicate with mankind. But if we're not listening to those visions, then he can use suffering and he can use pain. And Elihu paints a picture of things happening, sickness, illness, hardship coming upon people, and yet God wanting to rescue us through it and teach us through it. And he says that as we respond to him, then God turns things around. God can rescue us. God can deliver us, that there is meaning and there is purpose. And so chapter 33 comes to a close with Elihu maintaining that God is not just causing meaningless suffering, but that he is able to speak and he is able to bring purpose through the things that mankind suffers. This very deep and very complex argument that we've been following through Job is reaching towards a conclusion. We see that the words of Job are finished, the words of his friends are finished, but here in Elihu's mouth we're pointing to something of this key thing of the relationship with God, which perhaps points us back to where we started with God saying that you won't take Job's relationship with me away when he's talking to the adversary. And Elihu is bringing this to the fore again. There is an involvement of God in these things. We need to just hold on to the fact, whatever we're walking through in life, however difficult, however good, that God is speaking. God is a God who is close. God who is a God who walks with us through every situation. He's not distant. So may we know today that closeness of God in whatever circumstances we find ourselves. Have a very good August the 29th.